Now, if you have a small business that's generating cash, you're in the ultimate spot. You're in the spot that I was in. You have that income, you have that experience, and you can go chase opportunities when it comes to commercial real estate. I'm about to tell you something that you don't want to hear, that most of you don't want to hear. People ask me all the time, how do I get started in real estate? How do I get started in real estate? How do I get started in real estate? And my question right back at them is always the same. How much cash do you have? How much cash do you have? And they're kind of taken back. They're like, what do you mean? I'm interested in real estate. It doesn't matter how much cash I have. Well, it does. And the mistake that I see most people make is that they don't get enough cash. They don't accumulate enough cash before they think about real estate. Because every wealth building journey, if your goal is to build wealth, every wealth building journey happens in phases. Phase one is the cash generation. You're generating cash. You're creating cash out of thin air. Phase two is the multiplication of cash. It's growing wealth. It's the wealth growth phase. And phase three, as you get old, is the wealth preservation phase. You have so much of it that growing it is not your concern. You have enough. Growing it, taking the risk to grow your wealth is not worth it. You are trying to preserve it. You've got enough. You got all you need to survive. And you need to make sure you don't lose it. Now, my 75-year-old grandfather died with a couple $1,000,000, and he spent his last 15 years, rightfully so, in wealth preservation mode. 6% returns, 5% returns, right in line with the S&P 500, because that's all he needed to do to make the money he needed to live and to pass on a nest egg to his family. Now, I'm in a different phase. I have created my wealth. I used my service business back in 2011 that we started. That generated our income, and now we are growing our wealth. We're in phase two. I'm using real estate as a vehicle to turn my money into more money. And there's a step process there, right? Turn your money into more money. That's a process. The problem is that people use wealth as a wealth creation tool when it's not. People use real estate. People use real estate as a wealth creation tool. In my mind, there are way better ways to generate wealth, to create wealth. Real estate is very good at growing wealth, taking $1 million and turning it into $5 million, taking $5 million and turning it into $20 million. Real estate's really good at that. Real estate is not very good from going to 0 to 1. And you'll have people disagree. You'll have people disagree with me. But I'll tell you that all of aside from one, I know one, Chris Powers, a couple episodes ago, he got started in real estate. Well-networked guy, but he started with his sweat equity and built it through real estate. But he did know some wealthy people that could invest with him. He had a couple people early in his career that could invest. So did I. None of us are self-made, obviously. But I'll tell you that most of the real estate entrepreneurs who have been successful started another way, as entrepreneurs. So my journey has been since 2011. I was a middle-class kid with, a net worth of 20 grand that I'd made mowing lawns. My family, middle class as well, under $1 million net worth as a family. I didn't grow up in the country club. I didn't know a ton of wealthy people. I had to find a way to generate cash somehow. That was my business, my Sway startup, my storage squad, student storage business that my partner and I ran. That business put cash in our pockets. It put cash in our pockets and it taught us how to run a business, those two things. Then, when we were 26, we were in a position to put up our own cash to go into a big real estate deal. We put $500,000 of our own cash up and we got into a $2.9 million real estate deal. You know my story. If I wouldn't have done that, if I would have started with $100,000 and put it into a $500,000 project, I'd probably have at this point right now maybe a net worth of $400,000 to $500,000. I would have been able to turn that $100,000 over the course of 5 years. I would have been able to 5x it. But guess what? When you start with more, when you start with a lot more, when you start with 500,000 instead, and actually we had some on the sidelines as well, your snowball gets rolling a lot quicker. So is real estate the best way to generate wealth? No, it's not. So when people ask me, Nick, what's the best way to get started? What's the best way to get started? I'm like, okay, well, you're not ready for real estate. You don't have the cash to get ready for real estate. And this might be pissing you off right now if you're listening to this and you might be saying, Nick, you're wrong. And yeah, I might be wrong. There might be many, many ways that you can do a deal with no money, especially if your family has it or somebody who can invest in you has cash, disregard what I'm saying. If you know somebody with $3 or $4 million, if you have a parent or grandparent who can get you into your first commercial real estate deal, you're ready. You're ready to go. But if you don't know anybody with cash, if you don't know anybody who would trust you, you don't have any of your own cash, real estate's not the best way. It's just simply not the best way. What's the best way? Turn off this podcast, turn off the Nick Huber Show, and go to the Sweaty Startup. Go to the small business entrepreneurship podcast that I have and the website that I have that is all about wealth creation. 0 to 1, going from 0 to 1. Going from nothing to something, trading your time for money, then building a business, and then getting it to a point where it's generating $200,000 to $500,000 a year in profit for you. You do that for a couple of years while you spend 50 or 100 grand, and guess what? Come back and see me because you got the cash to get into real estate. That's where so many people go wrong. It's like my friend who's an investor, calls himself an investor, but he works a full-time job for 40 grand a year, and he spends 10 to 20 hours a week reading through quarterly reports of public companies, researching cryptocurrencies, and studying real estate and looking for his first deal. He's been looking for his first deal for 5 years. He's not doing the things that generate the wealth. He loves being an investor, and he'll spend 20 hours researching how to invest his $200 that week. But what I don't understand is why he's wasting that time growing what is a small amount of cash. I mean, people can argue with me and say, okay, yeah, he's learning lessons that are going to serve him for years. And of course, I'm not saying he's wasting his time at all, but his time would be better spent trading it for money. I mean, hell, 20 hours at McDonald's gets you $300. Guy's spending 20 hours figuring out how to invest $200. The opportunity cost of the time is huge. So if you're early on in your journey and you don't have any cash, think about getting some cash. Because I was able to make it in the real estate world. I was able to get my snowball rolling, and I was able to get on the way to generating, on paper, liquidity, maybe a couple $1 million right now to myself, but on paper, $10 million plus. 3 years ago, it was $1 million plus, right? It's growing very, very fast. Why is it growing so fast? Because I had other means of generating cash. I had some of my own cash to bring to a deal. Another thing is that cash talks. If you have no cash and you need it from somebody else, you have no leverage. We had some leverage in the very first deal that we put together because we brought a third of the cash ourselves. We brought 1/3 of the cash, 33% of it ourselves. We were able to personal guarantee the loan ourselves because we had some income, we had some cash on our balance statement to show the bank. We were able to get the loan for that big commercial real estate with us being the only ones who had to personally guarantee the loan. That's worth something too. Money talks when it comes to real estate. If you have none, you need to have options. So take this for what it's worth, but I'll tell you that there are much better ways to go from 0 to 1. There are much better ways to generate wealth than real estate. Most people that I know in the real estate business started in the small business space. They started with entrepreneurship. They started with small business that generated them cash. You look at the great real estate families of New York City, of LA, of Chicago, or just anywhere in our country where you see these real estate families that have built massive amounts of wealth. They almost never got started in real estate. They always had something else going on that generated a bunch of cash for them. And real estate was something they did with their cash once they had it. So if you're going to take one thing away from this episode, it's that real estate is not the best way to go from 0 to 1. Real estate is not the best way to make something out of nothing. Real estate is not the best way to get sweat equity because sweat equity is not worth a whole lot in this deal. And yes, you can be a GP like me and raise money from a bunch of LPs, but I have the reputation, I have the ability, I have the operational chops because I was an entrepreneur. And that stuff is serving me so well today. So you might not like it when you ask, hey, Nick, what's the best way for me to get involved in real estate? I want to tell you, stop thinking about real estate for now. You're not ready. Until you have $200 to $300 grand in the bank, commercial real estate is not really an option for you. Unless, of course, you know somebody who has it. Now, there's people in different scenarios, and I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown here. Let's say you are a 22-year-old middle-class person without access to capital. That's the way I was. Didn't know very many wealthy people. I went way beyond my network to raise the money for my first deal. I raised $500 grand from outside investors, but it was not from grandpa and aunt. And it was just, I got this idea. Can you give me the cash? No. I went from dinner table to acquaintance and sold myself and my ideas to raise the money. Got a lot of help. My dad was one of the investors, put in a little bit of the money. But the broker who sold us the land was another one of the major investors. I talked to the broker broker who was buying the land, selling the land to us. I talked him into investing with me as a 25-year-old. Same thing with the acquaintances of my father, that person, this person. I'm going to go get it, sit down at your dinner table. I'm going to talk to you about why you should do this investment with me. It carried a lot of weight because I had a small business that generated $500,000 a year, had $500,000 in cash, and I was going to personally guarantee the loan. I had skin in the game. If you don't have any skin in the game, that's different. So put you in a couple different scenarios. If you're like me as a 22-year-old, with no real wealth in your family, no real estate experience, I mean, yeah, you can listen to my podcast. Yeah, you can join our community. Yeah, you can do a lot of special things, but it's not the right time for you, at least, to get involved in commercial real estate, because a commercial real estate small-scale property costs $500,000. A strip mall, a small self-storage facility. The smallest self-storage facility that we purchased is $472,000 in Pittsburgh. We brought $100,000 of our own cash, and we had another $100,000 in reserve. So we needed $200,000 to buy our first very small self-storage facility. Now our average deal is over $2 million. So we need $5 million in cash to close that deal. $500,000 in cash to close a $2 million deal. 25% down. I like to keep cash in reserve as well. I like to keep a full year of debt service payments in reserve in case there's a problem, in case the facility stops making money, in case it needs a drainage ditch dug or a new roof or a disaster comes through and insurance wipes it out. How are you going to be faring? Cash talks in real estate. If you have no cash reserves, you get in desperate situations when problems arise. That's how you lose everything. Nobody talks about the downside of leverage and risk when it comes to real estate. So let's do another scenario. You're 25, you got none of your own cash, but let's say your parent has some or your uncle has some, and we're talking several $1 million. You have a wealthy network. You have somebody from the country club, somebody's parents, somebody from college's parents that you can do a deal with. That's a different story. You're ready. You could go raise the money. I mean, they're going to own most of it. When episode 3, how real estate private equity works, they're going to own most of the promote, maybe 80% of the upside. They're going to have a high preferred return. Maybe the first 10% of return goes to the person with the cash. But you might be able to get management fees, acquisition fees, a little slice of equity, and get some sweat in there so that you can earn some cash. That's a serious possibility for you if you find a good deal, have done your research, and can find somebody in your family or network who trusts you and can raise the money. Now let's give the other end of the spectrum is somebody with a W-2 job that has $100,000 set aside. $100,000 set aside from a W-2 job, working full time. You're almost ready. You could be ready, especially if you can raise a little bit from family and friends, or you could buy a small property worth $100,000 to $300,000. Still need $100,000 to do the deal. And I never recommend giving up all your cash to do one deal. Again, because if times get tough, the real estate market's illiquid. You can't do anything if you have no cash. If you have no cash to pay the bills, if you have no cash in reserves, you're screwed. So make sure you have some cash on the side. Now, if you're a W-2 employee with $500,000 to $1 million, you're ready to go do some real estate on the side. You're ready to either be an LP, as a silent investor with people like me, or people like Chris Powers, or people like many of the other GPs that hang around Twitter or in my Facebook community. You're ready for those things. Now, if you have a small business that's generating cash, you're in the ultimate spot. You're in the spot that I was in. You have that income, you have that experience, and you can go chase opportunities when it comes to commercial real estate. So take it for what it's worth. This is one opinion. You can house hack, you can do residential. I don't do residential because I just don't see a ton of upside, a ton of operational advantage when it comes to residential real estate. Houses are valued at a multiple of how much money they are, what's traded down the street. Like houses are valued based on who bought what down the street, comps, comparable transactions. Doesn't matter how profitable it is, doesn't matter how much it cash flows. It's all based on comps, and the banks lend on comps. So in markets like today, you can't find anything that cash flows if it's on the market because it's valued too high as compared to the rent that it brings in. Residential is brutal in that way. But commercial real estate, multifamily, duplexes, larger, self-storage, RV parks, industrial, all these different types of commercial real estate, they are valued based on how much money they make. They're valued based on how much money they make, and you can change the amount of money that they make. You can carve out your own competitive advantage. That's why I love commercial real estate. I love it because it can be worth something to somebody, but I know that it's worth more to me because I'm a better operator and I can make that asset generate more cash. That's why I love commercial real estate, and that's why I'm not a big fan of residential, but all the things that I talk about on the show apply to residential as well. So take it for what it's worth. Just another piece of the advice that you get, and I'll say it, I've said it before, I'll say it again, that I don't know everything. And this is just, you're getting advice from one person who's got one set of experiences, who has one way that he thinks is the best way to do this. There are thousands of ways to win. So get a lot of advice, put it through your internal bullshit meter, and if it doesn't pass, throw it out. And if you think it makes sense for you and what your situation is, then use it and get smarter and get better and get wealthier. Big news, guys. I created a free PDF that details my method on how I analyze a self-storage facility and figure out what it's worth. Give me a pen, the back of a napkin, and a couple metrics, and I can figure out about what the property is going to be worth to me. If you want to download this PDF, click in the show notes, the first link, and you can give me your email address, and you get a email right away with a 4-page PDF that outlines exactly how I think about underwriting or giving my initial analysis on a self-storage facility. Again, click the link in the show notes, and you're going to get that document for free. Before you go, we have a new sponsor of the show, recostseg.com. And if you bought a piece of real estate, you need to get a cost segregation study done. It's what allows you to get all that sweet, sweet bonus depreciation, and it's how real estate investors like me and many others pay almost nothing in taxes on an annual basis. You can cost seg a single-family rental, a short-term rental, or a large commercial property. recostseg.com is affordable and aggressive and super fast to turn them around. They've done 10 plus cost segs for me this year. They're going to do many more for me. Visit recostseg.com to learn more.